Alex Vitale is a professor of sociology and coordinator of the Policing and Social Justice Project at Brooklyn College and a visiting professor at London South Bank University. He spent the last 25 years writing about policing and consults both police departments and human rights organizations internationally. You can read his book, The End of Policing, if you go to versobooks.com, VERSO books.com. I'm sure it might be elsewhere. Alex, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Thank you so much for doing this. We reached out to you the other day. You know, on my Twitter on Tuesday, I just put it out there to my followers. I said, can people just send me what they think are good articles or good books or whatever on police reform, you know? And of course, I got a flood of links and nasty comments, but a lot of people sent me to your book, so I started downloading it, started reading it, and it's fascinating. It's one of those things that kind of blows the paradigm that has been created. When people start talking about end of police or defund the police or abolish the police, I think, it's a scary thing to think about, but the way you lay it out in your book is compelling. Can you tell us, what your deal is with it? With what's your perspective?
What is your major malfunction?
Yeah,
here?
exactly.
Yes. So I've been studying policing and community development for many years, for decades, and I just felt like policing is part of the problem, not part of the solution. And that what really bothered me was watching over all these years, more and more things get turned over for the police to manage,
mm-hmm.
and that they really don't have the right tools to manage those things, and that they often just make the problem worse. And that it's about a kind of bigger politics where we just let problems fester, and when they get out of control, then we turn it over to the police to manage.
And when we talk about, I just want to get the semantics of this right. And I really do recommend people read the book because it has a lot of research and sort of gives you a great history of policing in America and policing around the world. Is there a danger in getting trapped in the semantics when we have, DSA members and far left activists talking about defunding and abolishing? Are those the right words? Are those words potentially off-putting or too shocking for sort of the middle, even the middle left? Does it become sort of a clickbaity thing where it's like, well, I'm not really saying abolishing the police. I hate starting with that because it's sort of starting from a negative position about this issue, but it is sort of was my first reaction when I heard it. But that's not really what the book is saying. It does seem to be calling for some radical reforms, but reforms nonetheless.
Maybe radical transformations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, this question of language really matters. And it matters in terms of trying to organize and win public support. And, I don't use the term abolish the police in the book. And I'm certainly not imagining some situation where tomorrow there's some magic switch that somebody flips and then there are no police.
Right.
And a lot of people who don't like this idea don't like it because they think that that's what people are talking about. That all of a sudden we go from what we have today to no police. And then they imagine,
anarchy,
people running wild in the streets.
Yes, Ted Cruz said Mad Max kind of world, which is nobody wants that.
And no one wants that, obviously, and no one is calling for that. So one of the ways this gets talked about is invest, divest, and that's really the one I like best, but defund kind of captures some of this. So in either case, what people are actually calling for on the ground, and there are campaigns all across the country doing this, is to dial back police budgets and shift those resources into really addressing community needs. So instead of more narcotics units, let's actually create high quality medicalized drug treatment. Let's create harm reduction strategies. Let's invest in those communities that have turned to drug dealing as a kind of economic necessity.
Right.
And we can do that for all kinds of things that the police do.
Yeah. One devil's advocate kind of thing that came out of this that I noticed right away, which wasn't just your typical, like, oh, it's going to be Mad Max, was a social worker saying, like, whoa, hold on a sec. Don't put all this stuff on me all of a sudden. Things are already hard for us social workers who are asked to do a lot. So it does, how do you address that? Like, how do you make sure that we're not just shifting a burden onto another sector of the workforce? It's already under a lot of stress.
Right. So I think what we're talking about is building new institutional capacity. So, for instance, a huge amount of what police do these days is go on mental health crisis calls because we have no mental health infrastructure. So that's not a problem for social workers. Certainly not a problem for police to manage. It's a clinical problem.
Right.
And it also is a problem that can be managed people to people at a community basis, right? There's things like co-counseling and peer-to-peer mentoring, even for people with serious mental health problems. So it's also not just about creating a new bureaucracy.
Right.
It's just about trying to figure out how to meet people's needs where they are instead of criminalizing.
What do you say when you hear, obviously there's lots to criticize a lot of people for. Donald Trump takes a lot of the blame from the sort of traditional left media, I guess, or the mainstream media. And yet the reaction to that is like, well, these are Democratic governors. These are Democratic cities where these things are happening. What is the role that the federal government can play? And are the Democratic leaders of these cities and states also culpable and responsible ultimately?
Well, they are. And also the Democrats at the federal level. I mean, the Clinton administration played a really caustic role in driving up mass incarceration and flooding cities with more police through the 1994 crime bill.
Right.
So this is not a partisan book. This is not an attack on Trump. This is an attempt to try to chart an entirely new political path. Because the mainstream Democrats have really bought into this idea that there's no alternative,
right,
but to use whatever resources they have to kind of subsidize the already most successful parts of the economy in hopes that something will magically trickle down for the rest of us. And then when that produces mass homelessness and mass untreated mental illness and all these other problems, they turn that over to the police.
Right.
And this is true for leaders in both parties. And in Washington, nobody is really taking this seriously except a handful of really progressive congressional members like Ayanna Pressley and AOC to some extent, who are starting to articulate this idea of defunding police and shifting resources to communities.
Do you have any allies within the police? There must be people on the lower levels or somebody that sees how hard it is on the police and want to help radically transform from the inside or be an ally on the inside?
In a sense, I didn't write the book for police, and I'm not exactly trying to change their minds because these are political problems.
Right.
They're not, the police didn't invent the war on drugs. The police did not create mass homelessness. The police did not mess up our school system. But yes, I do get calls because there are police who feel that they've been asked to do a whole range of things that they shouldn't be doing. And
right.
I don't know if people remember when that group of officers were killed in Dallas several years ago.
Yes.
How horrible that was.
Yeah, was it a sniper?
Chief,
it was a
sniper,
right.
Whatever. It was horrible. And the police chief came on the television not long after that and said that the police in Dallas are being asked to do too much.
Yeah.
The schools don't work, so they flood the schools with police. There's no mental health services, so they give that to police. They got a loose dog problem in Dallas. They want the police to chase loose dogs.
Right.
It's like, we can't do all those things. And when we try to do them, we actually just undermine our relationship with the community.
Alex, let me ask you to answer a question or two from our audience. Is that all right?
Please.
Bjorky, you're here. Bjorky Spice. I don't believe that's her God-given name or her Christian name, as you say. You had a question for our guest, Alex. Look at me. Look at me. I'm like an NPR host.
You're like Terry Gross. So I love your book so far. I love your book so far, and I'm trying to use it to help me have conversations that can be really difficult with people that I know. So part of why I'm using Whiskey Spice as my name is I'm a public school teacher, and I'm expected to have certain ideas about our community that I don't necessarily always agree with. So I guess my question is, you're saying use the language of divest and invest, but I feel like whenever I try to address like systemic racism, that I almost feel like I'm talking to the mob, because it's like, oh, my brother's a cop or my uncle is this, and it feels like everyone's trying to protect each other and not actually listen to the problem.
Right. So what do we do about, our Fox News watching uncles and our cousins who are police officers? And I've been a police scholar for 20 years. You talk to police all over the world. And so I have a sense of how deep this challenge is. And we can't win everyone over to these ideas. Some people are not prepared to hear these things. They're actually invested in a kind of thin blue line worldview that just thinks that the police are the solution to everything. But I'll just tell you a quick story. I was in Houston giving a talk, and some police officers came. They were black and brown police officers, and they had grown up in Houston in neighborhoods where policing was a real problem. And they thought, well, maybe I want to do something positive. And maybe if I go into policing, I can help change the culture of policing, and I can try to use that job to help people. And I said, I don't think there's any changing the culture, right? We have to just dial it back. And they hung around afterwards, and we talked for a while. And I said, look, when you decided to become a police officer, if there had been a choice between being a police officer or working in a community center, coaching football and mentoring young people in your own community at the same pay and benefits,
right,
which of those jobs would you have taken?
Right.
And of course they laughed, and they like, oh man, we would much rather have had a job coaching football and mentoring kids, but there were no jobs like that.
Right.
And I said, exactly. Why are there never those jobs, but the police department is always hiring? And I meet young people all the time who want to go into policing because they think that's an avenue for helping the community. And we have to give them other options. And that's part of what this invest, divest strategy is about.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Bjorky, for the question. Thank you, Alex, for calling in to our little failing show here. It's actually been going very well today, but I really appreciate it. You're the man of the week, I believe, in a way, because
no drops at all. No drops at all.
It was a clean I think Doug fell asleep. I mean, shame on him. This is an important subject. How dare you? But no, you're doing great work, and I can't wait to. I read about a page a night because I have two kids, and I have my attention span has been destroyed by social media.
I can relate.
But I've been really. I think it's a great book. And it's free too.
I've unleashed the hound.
Yeah. How did you exactly? How did you released a free book? Well, it couldn't have always been free, but it's free right now. So
it is free right now. In fact, that's essentially the only way to get it. It turns out that we're sold out across North America. So definitely go and download it. And,
well, this can be the new treatise.
It's a nonprofit press. It's a nonprofit press.
Yeah.
And I have a professional teaching job. This is not about making money off the pain and suffering of the victims of police abuse. This is about trying to change the direction of the country. And to the extent that me and Verso Press, that we can try and do that, we're ready to do it.
I'm always amazed and impressed when people bring visions of what the future can be. And that's what I feel like this book is. And far too politicians have that vision. Far too politicians talk about it. But you're bringing it out in this book, so I recommend my audience listen to it, read it, and listen to what you have to say. You can listen to
it. It's also available as an audiobook.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Alex, again. I really do appreciate it.
You bet.
Have a great day. Have a great week and a great year.